I've lived in a lot of places in my life. Dusty camps in Kandahar, prefab shacks in frozen Alaska, even a floating barge drifting down a muddy river in China. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever felt more like home than the ranch I bought 6 years ago on the Oregon-California border. 40 acres of rough forest, a cold, fast creek running through it, and a forgotten wooden bridge that looked ready to collapse if you so much as sneezed near it. It was an old lumber mill property, abandoned decades ago, but when I saw it I didn't see rot. I saw potential. I saw peace. And I saw mine. That bridge was a relic from the late 60s, built by a stubborn logging family with more grit than sense. Most people would have written it off as a death trap. I saw a challenge. I wasn't about to let time or termites have the last word. Every weekend, every cold night after work, I was out there, wrench in hand, freezing my fingers off, reinforcing it plank by plank, steel bracing underneath, tension rods at the load points, pressure-treated redwood with non-slip coating, and because I'm an engineer by trade, and a paranoid one thanks to my military years, I even installed hidden load sensors and motion alerts that pinged my phone whenever someone crossed it. Overkill, probably. But old habits die hard when you've built load-bearing systems in combat zones. That bridge became the lifeline between my world and the rest of the county, my land on one side, civilization on the other. And just across the creek, like something out of a Stepford catalogue, sat Riverpine Bluffs, a perfectly trimmed HOA subdivision, new money, flawless lawns, identical mailboxes, and enough rules to make a soldier miss freedom. Luckily, my property was grandfathered out of their HOA jurisdiction. I wasn't one of them, and that suited me just fine. For the first year, things were quiet, a few neighborly waves, some kids skipping stones across the creek. No harm done, but good things never stay quiet for long. Word spread fast. Riverpine was expanding. A dozen new luxury homes were in the works, and while their official access road was a 7-mile nightmare of switchbacks and potholes, my freshly rebuilt bridge was the shortest path to their construction site, and that's when they came knocking. 3 people in polo shirts and fake smiles showed up on my porch one morning. Leading the charge was a woman named Karen Delaney, the HOA president, of course. She had that confident tone of someone used to getting her way. "Mr. Emory," she began sweetly, "we've reviewed your property plat and noticed that your bridge connects directly to our southern development road. We'd like to request temporary access for construction vehicles during our new build-out." I just stared at her, coffee in hand, disbelief on my face. "Let me stop you right there," I said. "That bridge isn't rated for commercial use. It's private. It's on my land, not county. Not HOA, mine." Karen smiled too long, the kind of smile that says I'm pretending to agree while planning to ignore you later. "Oh, of course," she said. "Just thought we'd ask." I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I noticed the first deep tire tracks across my bridge, not from pickups, from something heavy. The kind of wide treads you see on flatbeds or cement trucks. Fresh plaster flakes on the rail. A few cracked planks, still damp from the morning dew. I felt it in my gut. They'd crossed without permission. That same afternoon, I put up a massive sign at the bridge entrance. "Private bridge, no commercial access. Trespassers will be recorded." I activated the motion sensors, linked them to my phone, and waited. I didn't want to fight, but I wasn't about to watch strangers tear apart what I'd built. That night, standing on that bridge with a flashlight in hand, I stared at the muddy tire tracks, listening to the creek rushing below, and I got that old familiar feeling, the one you get right before a mission goes sideways. Some people only understand boundaries when you make them feel them. The next few nights, the alerts started coming in. First, £12,000, then 17,000. By the end of the week, my phone looked like a Christmas tree of warnings. I checked the footage. There it was, and plain as day. A white flatbed truck with R&B development printed on the side. The same contractor working for Riverpine's expansion. Driving right across my bridge like it was theirs. They weren't even trying to hide it. I wasn't angry. Not yet, just insulted. I sent a formal cease and desist letter the next morning, complete with photo evidence. Hand-delivered it to the HOA office. The secretary accepted it like it was radioactive. "Please make sure Ms. Delaney gets this personally," I said. "Oh, I'm sure she will. she replied with that fake HOA smile. Yeah, right. 2 days later, I got another alert. This time £30,000. They'd escalated. So I decided to send my own message. I parked my old John, Deere tractor right across the bridge entrance, chained the steering wheel, made it obvious it wasn't moving. That night, I poured a bourbon, sat down with my laptop, and watched the live feed. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Alert overload detected. 7,000 Labine structural. Integrity compromised. I switched to the camera view, and there it was again. The R&B truck, loaded down with massive concrete panels, creeping across my bridge under the moonlight. The bridge groaned. The tension rod screamed, and then, crack. The sound was sharp, violent, like a rifle shot. The truck's front end lurched forward, the rear fish-tailed, and in one horrific instant, the entire vehicle dropped halfway into the river. Metal twisted, wood splintered. The camera feed cut out. I sat there frozen, heart pounding. By the time I reached the riverbank, the driver was standing knee-deep in the water, staring at his wrecked truck like he'd just seen a ghost. "Jesus Christ, man," he yelled. "What kind of death trap is that bridge?" I pointed to the sign, and still standing, bold and clear. The kind that says private access, no commercial vehicles. "You missed it?" He didn't answer, just sloshed out of the river, muttering about calling his boss. I didn't stop him, didn't need to. The bridge was destroyed. My work? Gone. But I had the footage, the data, and the truth. And I knew deep down this wasn't just about a bridge anymore. This was the opening shot in a war. When I woke up the next morning, I thought the worst part was over. The bridge was gone, and yes, but at least that meant no one could trespass again. I was wrong. That was just the calm before the storm. By noon, I heard the rumble of SUVs rolling up my dirt driveway. Out stepped 3 people in suits, clipboards in hand, sunglasses reflecting my burnt bridge behind them. And at the front of the pack, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment, was Karen Delaney. "Mr. Emory," she said, voice dripping with fake concern, "we need to talk about the incident last night." "Incident?" I echoed. "You mean your contractors driving illegally onto my property and destroying my bridge?" Karen's smile tightened. "Let's not play the blame game. The Riverpine HOA board believes your structure wasn't up to code. Their truck fell because of your negligence." I actually laughed. "Couldn't help it. Negligence? Lady, I've got video footage, weight readings, and warning signs you couldn't miss unless you were blind or stupid." Her lawyer, a young guy who looked about 12, cleared his throat nervously. "Regardless, sir, the HOA intends to pursue damages. The truck was totaled. They'll be filing a claim." I crossed my arms and stared them down. "You go ahead and file whatever you want. Just remember, trespassing voids every claim you think you have. And I've got 3 camera angles proving it." Karen's fake politeness cracked. "Just a little. You'll be hearing from our attorneys," she snapped. Then they left, heels clicking, tires spitting gravel, leaving nothing but a trail of dust and rage behind them. The next week was chaos. I got official letters from the HOA, the county inspector, even a sheriff's deputy who looked embarrassed, just to be delivering them. The county wanted to review the safety of the bridge site. The HOA accused me of obstructing public access. And somewhere in that mountain of legal garbage, there was even a fine for environmental damage to the creek. Apparently, when their truck fell in, I was responsible for the oil spill it caused. You can't make this stuff up. I called my lawyer, an old buddy from my Army engineering days, Mike Pearson. Mike was one of those guys who could tear apart a legal argument the same way I could disassemble a generator blindfolded. After reading through the stack of papers, he just whistled low. "They're trying to strong-arm you," he said. Classic HOA move. "File 10 claims, hope you'll panic and settle." "They picked the wrong guy to panic," I said. Mike grinned. "That's why I like you. Listen, they're bluffing, but if you want to make this go away fast, we hit back harder." "Meaning?" He leaned back in his chair. "We file our own claim for property damage, trespassing, and private infrastructure destruction. Make them bleed money until they drop it." I smiled. Now we were speaking my language. A month passed. Then another. Paperwork, hearings, back and forth letters. The HOA wasn't used to resistance. They expected a pushover, not a veteran with data logs, camera footage, and the patience of a sniper. They finally cracked during the first court hearing. Karen showed up looking like she'd just walked out of a perfume commercial. Pearls. Heel's confidence dialed to 11. But the moment Mike played the video, her contractor's truck rolling across a clearly marked private bridge, ignoring the warning signs, that confidence started leaking out of her like air from a punctured tire. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Delaney, were you aware this bridge was private property?" Karen hesitated. "We believed it was shared access." Mike jumped in. "Believed? Based on what?" She fumbled. "It connects directly to our road. And yet the county maps, deeds, and the posted sign all say otherwise," Mike said smoothly. "In fact, your contractors ignored not just one warning, but 3. Karen's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "Enough. I've seen enough evidence. This isn't a shared bridge. It's Mr. Emory's. And your HOA is liable for the damages." Karen's mouth dropped open like she couldn't process losing. The judge ordered Riverpine HOA to pay full replacement costs for the bridge, plus my legal fees. I thought that would be the end of it, but when people like Karen lose power, they don't learn. They retaliate. 2 weeks later, the letters started coming again. Noise complaints, unsightly property, unauthorized construction equipment. All from the HOA, even though my land wasn't technically under their jurisdiction. Ignored the first few. Then one morning, I came out to find something that made my blood run cold. A no trespassing sign, my sign, was gone. In its place, someone had posted a laminated HOA notice on a wooden stake. Riverpine Community Property. Access limited to residents and authorized personnel. They were trying to claim my land. I ripped that sign out of the ground and drove straight to the HOA office. When I burst through the door, the secretary nearly dropped her coffee. Karen was inside, holding a clipboard, pretending to be busy. "You want to tell me why your little club posted a sign on my land?" I demanded. She looked up, all fake innocence. "Oh, that? Simple mix-up. The new development maps haven't been updated yet. I'll have someone remove it." "Already did," I said flatly. "And if I see another one, I'll start billing you for trespassing again." Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You know, Mr. Emory, it would be easier if you just joined the HOA. That way we could all get along." I laughed. "You think I'm going to pay you to harass me?" "Not a chance." Her voice dropped. "You can't stop progress forever." I leaned in close. "Lady, I built bridges in war zones. If you think a homeowners association scares me, you've never met a man with nothing left to lose." And for the first time, Karen didn't have a comeback. That night I stood by the creek, staring at the remains of my bridge, the twisted metal, the broken timbers glinting in the moonlight. The air smelled like pine and rain and quiet revenge. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused. They wanted a fight? Fine. Next time I wouldn't rebuild a bridge, I'd build something they'd never forget. You ever notice how people pick their weapons based on what they know? Karen knew bylaws and potluck etiquette. I knew sensors, load calculations, and how to make a place inconvenient on purpose. Her arsenal was paperwork and polite smiles. Mine was proof, engineering, and the sort of patience you only get after rebuilding a bridge at 2 in the morning. After the judge's ruling, Riverpine pivoted from overt aggression to something more insidious, bureaucratic attrition. They tried to drown me in petty complaints and phantom violations. It was annoying, sure, but predictable. What they didn't expect was that I would use their own rules and their own appetite for public optics against them. I didn't want a petty public feud. I wanted the one thing that would burn them the most: humiliation. The HOA lived on image. Control their image and you control them. So I cooked up something with surgical precision. No violence, no sabotage, just a scalpel-sharp public embarrassment. Call it performance art for revenge. Step 1 was simple. Make my property clearly and loudly not part of their carefully curated suburb. If Riverpine was a magazine shoot of manicured lawns and matching fountains, I was going to be the 2-page spread in the back the editor forgot, except I'd make it an exhibit. I started small. I rebuilt the bridge, but this time not to be covert or romantic. I rebuilt it to be a statement. Galvanized steel columns sunk deep into bedrock. Sealed hardwood decking that would laugh at rain. Reinforced railings, double security cameras with 360-degree sweeps, LED lights on motion detection, and a plaque that read, "Plain as a court order, private property, no entry without permission. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Then I put up the sign everyone loved in Riverpine. Only mine used their language. Big, neat letters, HOA-style fonts. A logo I designed that mimicked their glossy aesthetic and said, "Welcome to Emory Commons, a community space." That's where the fun began. I started applying for permits, not for a driveway or a barn, for a park. A tiny, perfectly legal public-facing park that happened to sit right where their contractors had been cutting corners for months. Benches, a small gazebo, native plantings, interpretive signage about local wildlife, ADA access paths, and a little gravel parking loop, big enough for visitors but too small for heavy equipment. I submitted the paperwork, the site plans, the environmental assessments, and paid every fee the county demanded. Each form I filled was another thin thread I wrapped around their necks, because Riverpine's identity relied on moral high ground, preserving community, protecting nature, volunteerism at bake sales. By converting a corner of my property into a legitimate, county-approved public amenity, I hijacked that moral high ground and tied it to my name. The county issued a public notice, and that's when the optics war went fully nuclear. Headlines printed in the local digital rag read, "Local landowner opens public park to preserve creekside habitat." The newsfeed loved it. County newsletters shared my ribbon-cutting date. Even some Riverpine residents, the ones who hadn't drunk the HOA Kool-Aid, emailed congratulations. I played it perfectly. Warmly worded press releases, interviews that sounded community-focused, and a little theatrics to get cameras there when I installed the benches. If Karen wanted to be the community matriarch, I'd let the community choose. The trick wasn't just the park itself. It was to control the story. I curated testimonies from locals, the goat farmer from down the road, the woman who ran the small animal shelter, the school teacher who used to bring kids to the creek for nature walks. I recorded them, transcribed their gratitude, and put everything in a tidy folder titled Community Support for Emory Commons. Every interview was an arrow pointed at the HOA's chest. Look, the community prefers accessible green space. Look, the Riverpine expansion threatens our habitat. Riverpine's reaction was almost poetic in its predictability. Karen called it a stunt, then an unauthorized attempt to manipulate public opinion. Her board started a meeting and issued a statement saying that the park posed safety and security concerns and demanded the county revoke the permits. They tried to use fear as a wedge, unknown visitors and increased traffic, that old HOA chestnut. Meanwhile, my email inbox quietly filled with messages from people who wanted to bring their kids to the creek, to picnic, to volunteer planting native willows. They tried to weaponize fear. I weaponized participation. On the ribbon-cutting day, they sent Karen, on pearls and blazer, same tired expression, to deliver a statement warning residents that the new park might encourage undesirable activity. Nobody noticed. What the cameras did notice were the families pulling up with strollers, the two elderly men from the Masonic Lodge setting up folding chairs, the local radio reporter taking notes, and the county inspector giving me a thumbs up. The scene looked like a small-town victory, and that's exactly how I'd staged it. And because I wasn't entirely heartless, I staged an extra touch of theatrical justice. Remember those R&B trucks? I called in favors. A contractor I knew who specialized in small-footprint landscaping volunteered to donate his crew for the opening day. They arrived in bright green vans, nothing like the massive flatbeds Riverpine had used, and planted things by hand. The volunteers were local, not actors, not paid shills, just people who wanted a quiet place to walk their dogs. Their faces were real. The cameras loved them. Within days, the petition Riverpine had curated to reclaim the bridge, the one that ballooned to hundreds of signatures, thanks to bot accounts and HOA astroturfing, started to look absurd. How could it argue that I was a public menace when the public in real life was bringing picnics and planting native flora? Karen escalated anyway. She arranged for a private meeting with the county planner and trotted out safety concerns again. I answered with a binder of compliance: ADA inspections, drainage plans, pollutant mitigation strategies, insurance documentation, everything they loved to accuse me of lacking. Each time she launched a bureaucratic salvo, I had a legal shield ready. It was like playing chess against someone who thought the game was just about flashing your status. Then came the thing that truly undid them, a community petition of a different sort. Not one manufactured by anonymous IPs and forum posts, but a stack of physical signatures gathered by real people who came to the park. Neighbors signed it in person. School kids drew small hearts next to their names. A retired logger wrote, "This man fixed what time and greed had broken." The petition went straight to the county board with a short cover letter: support for Emory Commons, a safe, managed public space. The board was not blind. When you have piles of stamped real-world signatures and a county-approved plan, it's hard to argue public interest. The county sent a terse memo back to Riverpine: cease and desist on attempts to obstruct legal public amenities. Karen's face, the next time I saw her in public, had an uncanny new look. Smaller, like a balloon that had lost air. Rumors began to ripple through her carefully manicured enclave. The HOA members started whispering among themselves. What had she promised? What had she promised and failed to deliver? The sheen of control began to show hairline cracks. I did not dance on those cracks. I simply showed up quietly to maintain the park. I mended a bench that a late-night party had tipped over. I patched a vandalized sign. I hired a kid from the neighborhood to sweep the path every morning. The simple acts of stewardship made the locals trust the place. They liked that their green space wasn't curated by a distant board who dismissed them in glossy emails. They liked that a neighbor, flawed, stubborn, maybe a little obnoxious, was watching over it. Riverpine escalated one last time. They filed a motion alleging nuisance, claiming my park was an unlicensed public gathering place. I replied with an ironclad dossier: permits, inspections, recorded community support, and a timeline showing that their contractors had trespassed on my land repeatedly. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The board that once claimed to protect community values was now trying to prevent the community from meeting. By the time the county issued a final ruling, after weeks of review, it was short and to the point. Emory Commons was legal, properly permitted, and under routine county oversight. Any further attempts by Riverpine to obstruct the park would be considered harassment and could be subject to fines. I had not smashed mailboxes or sabotaged cars or vandalized property. I'd done something worse for them. I'd taken their story and rewritten it in plain daylight. They wanted control of the narrative. I surrendered nothing. Instead, I gave the community something real. And nothing humiliated a reputation more than seeing the neighborhood you'd tried to lord over, laughing and planting saplings in the one place you were trying to claim. When the county posted their ruling online, a neighbor sent me a photo: Karen standing at a community event across the creek, clapping politely as families enjoyed my benches, eyes scanning for a moment she could reclaim. I sighed and walked down to the gazebo, sat on a bench, watched a pair of kids chase each other through a spray of sunlit dust. The bridge that connected us all had been rebuilt, but not as an access route for heavy trucks. It was a crossing for people, and that was the point. If you've ever fought with an HOA, you know they don't give up because they're right. They give up when it stops being fun. And for Karen, humiliation wasn't defeat. It was fuel. A few quiet weeks passed after the county ruling. Families came to the park. Kids rode bikes along the gravel paths. Locals started calling the place the Commons. Even the sheriff's deputy, the same one who'd once delivered HOA complaints to my door, stopped by with his wife and said, "Glad someone's putting this land to good use." For a moment, I thought it was over. Then one morning, I got an alert from my bridge cameras, at 17 a.m., motion detected. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, checked the feed, nothing but fog and the faint shimmer of headlights. Then a figure, someone in dark clothing, hood up, walking across the bridge. They crouched near one of the park benches, fiddled with something, then disappeared into the night. By dawn, the air smelled faintly of gasoline. I sprinted down to the park. The benches were fine. The gazebo was fine, but by the creek edge, tucked behind a rock, I found a small red can and still half full. Someone had planned to burn the place. I called the sheriff. They logged it as attempted vandalism, but didn't have enough to pursue. Could have been anyone, he said. But I wasn't anyone, and neither was the person behind this. This had Karen's perfume all over it. I went into what I call combat engineer mode. I upgraded every security measure on that park. New motion cameras, infrared capable, solar-powered floodlights that activated on human heat signatures, hidden trail sensors buried near the path, triggered by weight. And this, because I wasn't going to let this turn into my word versus hers, I installed a covert microphone inside the gazebo roof. If anyone came back, I'd have sound, not just video. 3 nights later, my system pinged again. 49 a.m. Motion detected, same figure. Same hood, but this time there were 2 people. I zoomed in. The second person was carrying a large flat object, a metal sign. They knelt, hammered it into the ground beside my park entrance, then left in a hurry. When I reached the site the next morning, I saw it. Warning: unsafe structure closed by order of Riverpine HOA. They'd faked an official closure notice. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Karen couldn't win legally, so now she was trying to win visually. Optics. Always optics. I carefully removed the sign, photographed it from every angle, bagged it and stored it in my workshop. But when I zoomed in on the security footage, I noticed something new. The hood slipped for a second. Under the streetlight, I caught a clear glimpse of one face. Not Karen, but her right-hand man on the HOA board. Greg Foster. Greg was the kind of guy who always wore too much cologne and called himself a community visionary. He'd handled most of Riverpine's contractor bids and bragged about building partnerships, the kind that usually ended with him profiting, quietly on the side. Now here he was, trespassing, planting fake closure notices on my land. So I did what any ex-engineer with a sense of theater would do. I baited the trap. The next weekend, I posted a community workday on local Facebook. Groups inviting volunteers to repaint the gazebo and add new planters. Made sure the event page was public, and I knew Karen's spies would see it. Sure enough, that same night, another alert popped up. This time the feed showed Greg again, and someone else I hadn't seen before. A tall man in work boots, carrying a toolbox. They moved like they'd done this before, deliberate, quiet, professional. Then the taller one pulled something shiny from the box, a wrench. He knelt near the bridge's foundation bolts. He was tampering with the structure. I watched, jaw tight, as he loosened the primary tension lock, not enough to make it obvious, but enough to cause failure over time. Slow creeping sabotage. They left just before dawn. I took a screenshot from the footage, the man's face partly visible, and sent it to Mike, my lawyer. Within hours, he called me back. "You're not going to believe this. That's Alan Greaves, the construction foreman for Riverpine's expansion project. Same guy who ran the trucks across your old bridge." And just like that, the pattern was clear. Karen wasn't just playing dirty. She was orchestrating it. Mike and I spent the next week putting together a file that would make any investigator's jaw drop. Video evidence, timestamp logs, audio clips of Greg whispering, "Let's loosen it a bit, she won't notice." Even a frame where Alan says, "Karen will cover us." We labeled it the forensic file, Riverpine sabotage. Mike filed for an injunction the next morning. Within 48 hours, a county investigator showed up on my property with deputies and forensic inspectors. When they found the tampered bolts, the fake signs, and the vandalized security sensor, it was over. Karen tried to spin it, of course. We had no idea. She told the press. These men acted independently, but it was too late. The story spread like wildfire. Local papers ran with headlines like, "HOA members accused of sabotaging private park. Bridge, owner strikes back with evidence." And then the video leaked. Someone at the county office, probably one of the reporters I'd quietly shared it with, published the clip online. Within hours, it had 100,000 views. The comment section was brutal. "Classic HOA power trip. That guy's a hero. Karen needs a hobby." Karen went into hiding. And Greg resigned from the HOA for personal reasons. Alan lost his contractor's license after the insurance company refused to cover his violations. The same people who once clapped at HOA meetings now avoided eye contact when she walked by. And me? I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. I just stood on that bridge one evening, watching the sunset reflect off the creek, the sound of laughter coming from the park, and thought, this isn't revenge, this is balance. When the county finally sent me the formal closure letter on the investigation, there was one line that made me smile. Mr. Emory's surveillance and documentation have been instrumental in protecting public safety and preserving community trust. Community trust. Imagine that. The HOA had tried to bury me with lies, but all I'd done was shine a light, and they'd burned themselves. You can tell a storm's coming long before the thunder hits. In the weeks after the sabotage scandal broke, Riverpine looked calm on the surface, but you could feel the tension underneath. Lawns were still mowed, hedges still trimmed, but no one waved anymore. HOA meetings went quiet. The newsletters stopped coming. The neighborhood that once ran on control was running on fear. And at the center of it all was Karen Delaney, the woman who used to smile like she owned the sun. Now, she was a ghost haunting her own kingdom. I thought she'd finally back off. After all, she'd lost everything that mattered to her. Her influence, her allies, her reputation. But if I'd learned anything by then, it was this. People like Karen don't stop when they lose power. They double down trying to get it back. It started small, a rumor here, a whisper there. Someone told me she'd been hosting private community gatherings at her house again. Another said she was forming a new committee to represent Riverpine's real residents. I ignored it, until one day, I got a letter that made me laugh so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Notice of intent to reclassify property. Issued by Riverpine Neighborhood Coalition, signed by Acting Chairwoman Karen Delaney. She was trying to form a new HOA, a rebranded version, to absorb my land under revised community management boundaries. I almost framed it. Mike, my lawyer, didn't find it funny. This isn't just harassment, he said. She's trying to rewrite county zoning language. If she files this with the planning office, it could create real headaches. So we took precautions. I went to the county office myself, walked straight into the zoning department, and handed over every document proving Riverpine had no jurisdiction beyond their original plat line. The clerk, an older guy named Harold who'd seen more bureaucratic nonsense than anyone alive, just chuckled. Ah, Karen Delaney again, he said, stamping my paperwork. She's been in here twice this week. Don't worry, Mr. Emory, we're not entertaining fantasy maps. Fantasy maps, that's exactly what they were, sketches of extended borders, red lines circling my park like she was playing Monopoly with real property. Still, I wasn't naive. Karen might not win through law, but she could win through perception. All she needed was a crowd that believed her. So I watched, waited, listened. 2 weeks later, I got word that she was holding a special announcement in Riverpine's community hall, the same place they'd once hosted their Christmas gala and HOA elections. The flyer read, Riverpine Future Meeting, open to all concerned homeowners. Discussion on safety, boundaries, and property restoration. I didn't need to guess who the villain of that meeting would be. I showed up. When I walked through the doors, the murmurs stopped. Maybe 20 people were there, some curious, some hostile. Karen stood at the front with her usual pearls and pastel blazer, pretending the past 6 months hadn't blown up in her face. She smiled, that brittle smile. Thank you all for coming, she began. I know recent events have been challenging, but I want to talk about moving forward, reclaiming our neighborhood from outsiders and restoring Riverpine's dignity. Outsiders. That was me. She clicked a remote, and a slide appeared on the projector, a photo of my park, except she'd edited it, zoomed in, distorted the colors, and added captions like unsafe structure and unauthorized construction. Then she pointed dramatically at the screen. This, she said, is what happens when regulations are ignored, when we let individuals act without oversight. Riverpine deserves better. A few people clapped weakly. Most just looked uncomfortable. I raised my hand. Question, I said, stepping forward. Is this the part where you tell everyone you trespassed? forged signs and sent contractors to vandalize my property. Or is that slide coming later? Karen froze. Her face twitched, but she recovered quickly. Mr. Emory, she said, syrupy sweet, this meeting isn't about the past. Then why are you showing doctored photos of it? I interrupted. A ripple of whispers ran through the room, she snapped. You've been undermining this community from the start. You embarrassed us, humiliated our contractors, destroyed our bridge. I cut her off again. Your contractors destroyed my bridge. You tried to steal my land. You faked a closure notice. You lost every legal battle. So tell me, Karen, what exactly are you trying to restore? Your pride? The silence was deafening. She tried to speak, but no one jumped to defend her. Even Greg, her ex-vice chair sitting in the back, avoided eye contact. Finally, one older resident stood up. Karen, she said gently, maybe it's time to let it go. The man built something nice for the community. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. That was it. The last thread snapped. Karen gathered her papers, trembling, and stormed out without another word. The crowd dispersed slowly, like a balloon deflating. Some people came up to me, shook my hand. Didn't know the full story, one man said. Guess we do now. I didn't gloat. I just nodded and left. 2 days later, the final blow landed. The county released a new audit. Riverpine HOA was being dissolved. Turns out, after the sabotage incident, half their board had resigned. Without a functioning leadership quorum or compliant insurance policy, they were legally defunct. The county absorbed their maintenance duties until a new association could be formed someday. Karen's empire was gone. No more meetings, no more power, no more Riverpine as she'd built it. I heard she sold her house quietly a month later. Cash deal. No goodbyes. A moving van came one morning, and by sundown, she was gone. The street she used to patrol with a clipboard was just another quiet road leading to nowhere. One evening, not long after, I was sitting on a bench in the park, watching the creek shimmer under the fading light. A family was having a picnic near the gazebo. A kid was feeding ducks. A man from across the creek, one of the newer homeowners, waved at me. Hey, Mr. Emory, he shouted. They say you built this place yourself. I smiled. Something like that. He grinned. Well, thanks. That's the best part of Riverpine now. I nodded, leaned back, and let the sound of the water fill the silence. Funny how that worked. They tried to take my bridge, so I built one that would outlast them all. They say revenge is best served cold. But I don't think this story was ever about revenge. It was about peace and the cost of keeping it. When Karen left Riverpine, it was like someone finally cut the static out of the air. No more threats. No more letters. No more HOA gossip filling mailboxes like poison. The neighborhood started breathing again. The park became what it was always meant to be. Open, quiet, alive. Kids chased kites down the hill. Old couples walked hand in hand across the bridge I rebuilt. Teenagers used the benches for late-night guitar sessions. The sign at the entrance still read, Private Park. But everyone knew what it really meant. Welcome. Just don't try to own it. I'd wake up some mornings to see strangers sitting under the gazebo, reading, sketching, or just watching the water flow. No fences, no rules, no HOA patrols. Sometimes I'd see a car slow down near the edge of the park. A fancy sedan, tinted windows, and for a split second I'd think maybe Karen had come back. But the car would move on, she never did. And honestly, that was fine. Because the truth is, she didn't lose to me. She lost to herself, to her obsession with control, to her belief that power meant ownership instead of responsibility. A few months later, I got a letter from the county, official, embossed seal and all. I opened it cautiously, half expecting another bureaucratic headache. But it wasn't. It was an invitation. They wanted to recognize the Bridge Commons, my little reclaimed patch of land, as an official public green space. They even offered to add it to the local trail map. I sat there for a while, staring at that letter, because I realized something I hadn't before. This all started with one parking spot, one stupid, ordinary square of asphalt, and somehow it ended with a park, a space that brought people together instead of tearing them apart. Karen tried to take something small from me, and without meaning to, she gave me something bigger, A local reporter once asked me, if you could say one thing to her now, to Karen, what would it be? I didn't have to think long. I said, well, thank you for underestimating me, because without her arrogance, I never would have built the bridge. Without her greed, I never would have learned what real ownership means. And without her anger, this community never would have found peace. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'll walk down that same gravel path, listen to the creek and let the wind carry the sound through the trees, and I swear, if you stand there long enough, you can almost hear it whisper, let go. The bridge creaks softly as I cross it, the same bridge she tried to destroy, and I smile, knowing it's stronger than ever, not just because of steel or bolts or engineering, but because it was built on something she never understood: respect. The camera pans out, over the park, the bridge, the water reflecting the last orange light of sunset, the town quiet, the chaos gone, and a single plaque glinting by the gazebo that reads, "This park stands as proof that peace is not given, it's built."